Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to peel back the curtain on something that happens every single day in the world of finance: credit risk analysis. We're going to find out exactly how those huge decisions about who gets money and who doesn't are really made. Let's dive right in.
So it all kicks off with a pretty simple question, one you've probably wondered about yourself. How in the world does a bank decide who actually gets a loan? I mean, in a way, it's kind of like lending a friend $20, except it's scaled up to millions or even billions of dollars, and, the stakes are just a little bit higher.
And to really get our heads around that, we need to talk about the one big problem they're all trying to solve. And that is the problem of credit risk.
Okay, so what is it officially? Well, credit risk is basically the danger that you're not going to get paid back. It's the risk that the person or the company you lent money to just doesn't pay it back, or they fail to hold up their end of the bargain. It's the risk of getting stiffed, plain and simple. But you know what? Forget the fancy definitions for a second. When you strip away all the jargon, all the complicated financial models and spreadsheets, it really just boils down to this one, simple, absolutely critical question. No matter if it's a small business loan or a massive corporate deal, the lender is always asking themselves, will I get my money back? All right, so if that's the big question, how do you even begin to answer it? Well, first you have to understand who's actually involved in the deal. It's always a relationship between two key players. On one side of the table, you've got the creditor. That's the lender, the bank, the investor, basically the one with the money. And on the other side, you have the obligor. That's the borrower, the client, the one who has an obligation to pay the money back. It's always a two-way street, and you have to understand both sides to get anywhere. And for any one of these relationships, this is pretty much the playbook. These are the key questions an analyst is always asking. They want to know the whole story. How did this risk even start? How are we going to analyze it and measure it? And importantly, how do we keep an eye on it over time? And maybe, how do we get rid of it? It's not a snapshot. It's the whole life cycle of the risk. Okay, so that brings us right to the heart of it all, the analysis itself. And this is where things get really interesting, because it's not just about crunching numbers, not by a long shot. And here's something you might not expect. The whole point of all this work, it isn't just to spit out a number. The real goal is to build a solid, logical argument. An analyst's job is to make a compelling case, backed up by evidence, for why taking this risk is either a brilliant idea or a terrible one. And this chart, it just shows you exactly what I mean. Look at this. Yeah, sure, financial analysis, the hard numbers, that's the biggest slice of the pie. But it's not even half the story. You've got huge chunks for the business environment, past experience with the client, and get this, that last chunk is pure human insight and judgment. It really is part science, part art. Right, because a company with perfect-looking financials could still be a huge risk if you analyze them in a vacuum. You have to ask the big questions. What's going on in their industry? How's the bigger economy doing? Are there any weird political risks where they operate? Context is everything. All right, so the deep dive is done. The argument is built. Now what? I mean, how does all that thinking and analysis actually turn into a real-world decision? Well, all of that incredibly complex analysis, the numbers, the context, the human judgment, it all gets boiled down and summarized into one single, really powerful tool, a credit rating. It's an amazingly efficient way to communicate a ton of complex information. Now, these ratings generally come in two main flavors. You've got the public ones that we all hear about on the news, the AAs, the Bs, the CCCs from big agencies like S&P and Moody's. But here's the thing most people don't realize. Most companies out there don't have a public rating, and that's why banks have to create their own internal ratings, usually on a number scale, to do the exact same crucial job. So you might see something like this, BBB. It looks so simple, right? Just 3 letters. But you have to remember, packed inside that simple rating is everything we just talked about. It's a powerful shorthand for a massive amount of work and judgment.
And this is why that shorthand is so incredibly important. Because that rating doesn't just sit there on a report, it directly drives the business strategy. If the rating's high, that means low risk. So hey, let's do more business. If it's in the middle, okay, we'll just maintain things as they are. But if that rating is low, whoa, that's a red flag. It means high risk, and the strategy is to back away, reduce your exposure, or just avoid the deal completely. The analysis literally turns into an action plan.
Which brings us to the end of the line, the final decision. This is what the whole journey has been building towards. And this funnel just sums up the whole process perfectly, doesn't it? It all starts with the proposal. Then you do the deep dive analysis. From that, you assign a rating. That rating tells you what your strategy should be. And finally, bam, you make the call, yes or no. It's a clear, logical path from a question mark to a final answer.
And that's really the bottom line. Credit risk management isn't some abstract academic exercise. It's an intensely practical tool. It is all about making a concrete decision on a specific client, a specific borrower, or a single transaction.
But here's a final thought to leave you with. So much of what we've talked about involves using the past, historical data, past performance, to try and predict the future. And that leads to a really big question, right? In a world that's changing faster than ever, is history always the best guide? And how will this entire process have to evolve to keep up?